I don't know, and I don't think that anybody really knows truth of truth of truth of truth. Like, we have laws, we have scientific facts, but like the truth of where we came from, I don't know.
Hey, it's Cherie Burton. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. This is a podcast show for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are, here and now, body and soul. So I am thrilled today to be able to have this really engaging discussion with Sariah Hoffman, who is my yoga mentor. I met her when I was going through a challenging time last year. She introduced me to this whole new world of yoga therapy. I didn't know that women could sit around and talk and express and do yoga poses and kind of stylize it for our own well-being and use our voices and become embodied and all of those things. So it's opened up this whole new world for me. I brought my daughter Savannah in, and together we have been doing our yoga teacher training 200-hour certification through Sariah, backpocketyoga.com. See her style a little bit and her emphasis and her mission and message. We're going to talk today about breath and being in the truth of what is and how to get past your triggers and arrive at your truth and feeling into your body and knowing that feelings are information. Hey everyone, welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. This is your host, Cherie Burton. And today's topic is, for lack of a better phrase, and at the risk of sounding too cliche, really close to my heart. This lady that I have on with us today has been really pivotal in the shifts that I've been making over the last year. And I can't even tell you what my life would be like if I did not meet her. But Sariah is here, Sariah Hoffman, and she's going to be changing her name soon, probably, right? Because you're engaged. So are you going to change your name?
I am going to change my name, yeah.
Yay! What's your new last name going to be?
It will be Bastion.
Ah, I'd love it. That sounds super cool.
Yeah.
But she is a yoga guru. I know that word guru gets overused, but she is born to be a yogi. Just everything about her deep wisdom, the reservoir of compassion that she holds. Obviously, she has a lot of physical prowess and power around her physical body. She also has a lot of deep spirituality that she's cultivated and refined over the years. And we'll get into her actual story here in a bit. But as far as her professional career with yoga, it's been super extensive. She's been teaching for 12 years. She started in more of a power yoga with the gym scene, gym crowd. She moved more into more of that holistic spiritual as a path, yoga as a spiritual practice. And that's kind of the context around how I met her. But she's got ERYT 500, which means basically she's a super experienced yoga teacher. And she's I don't know, you're not a certified yoga therapist, but you're super close to that, right? I mean, because I know yoga therapy is...
Certified yoga therapist, I'm not licensed. So yoga therapy is moving towards more of the medicinal way. So being a licensed means that I could accept insurance. Is pretty much the only thing that's missing from my practice.
But you have all the hours, you have all the practicum, you have all the training, you have all the knowledge. You just don't hold yeah. And it shows because I go to Sariah's yoga school and her branding is Back Pocket Yoga, which I think is super fun. But I met Sariah when I was going through a crisis in my marriage this last year. And we were in a venue, in a setting. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a clinical setting, but just a lot of other women who were struggling with their marriages and kind of going through existential crises. And actually, my daughter Savannah and I have started our yoga journey together in getting our 200-hour yoga teacher training certification through Sariah. And it's been super amazing to take this journey with my daughter, and how much, Sariah, you have inspired my daughter. I think she wants to become a yoga therapist. Yeah. But welcome. And also, she's a mom. She's been a single mom for a long time, and she can share with that whatever feels relevant for her to share with us. But she's got 2 boys, and she's engaged to a beautiful man named Boyd that we get to hear about all the time in our regular. I feel like I know him so well, and I have met him one time. But she just brings with you love. I'm sure whatever comes out of her is going to be really, really beautiful because she holds a lot of wisdom and compassion. And one of the main things, Sariah, I think that is so inspiring about you is how real you are. Like, is it okay for me to say that we burp and fart around each other and you create a space for us to do that? Like our whole class, our whole yoga teacher training. How many of us are there? 15 or 16?
Yeah.
And I've just grown to love these women. They're like sisters to me now. And none of us knew what the heck we were doing, except maybe Val.
True.
But you have just allowed us to be in the body we're in the ages we are, which is very varied. And just let us express whatever it is that needs to be expressed. So,
and fight through, because ultimately it's not about the body that you're in or the age that you are, but more. And what I love about this is that the yoga journey has brought me towards my spiritual divine self. And that is why yoga is accessible to everybody, is that it's not necessarily the physical practice. It really is a journey towards the inner self. And that's what fits for everybody.
You know, honestly, starting yoga. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you guys, this is super transparent. I have avoided yoga. I have known about yoga, obviously, like for decades. And I created a vision board many, many years ago that had just the phrase "my yoga" on it. And it has a woman in a posture, which I have since learned now is child's pose, because I thought that was my yoga. I'm just staying out. But I knew someday something would show up that made it less daunting for me, because I knew it was more than just physicality. I knew it was to some degree a practice of, I just didn't really understand. Like, I knew it was powerful, and I knew that I needed it for my body, but I never really resonated. Every time I would go try yoga somewhere, whatever, I never really resonated with it until I stepped into your class.
Yeah.
But could you, and by the way, like, I'm a huge believer in vision boards. And so as soon as I started to experience your class, because it started with a prana class, which is just energy of breathing, connecting, going within.
Learning how your body's talking to you.
How your body's talking to you. Yeah, that's where I didn't go straight into yoga teacher training with Sariah, but that's where it started for me, is that class, and just the empowered feeling around honoring what the body's messaging is, and how I can notice that, and how I can use it as a vehicle for empowerment. So Sariah, whatever you want to share about your own story, I know you're a super open person, but whatever you want to share about your story and what led you to where you are now that you think could be revealing that we could relate to.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I've been teaching yoga for 12 years, and I taught, in the gym settings. I really was drawn to the physical portion of the practice. And I don't think sometimes I'll say, like, I taught it, and I did yoga, but I didn't practice it. And I think with the trials of my own life and the situations that I've been put in, as I mentioned, my yoga practice has evolved to where I'm not practicing the physical asana as a means to it, but I'm practicing being my divine self. And I think, sometimes we look at trials and suffering and heartache and, all the hard things that happen to us in life. And in the moment, we have a hard time recognizing the beauty that they offer. And the same is held for my own story. I've been married 3 times. So when you mentioned that I'm engaged, again, there's maybe a little bit of shame still that I have to work with, of like, yeah, I'm engaged again. But I've worked through that shame in my own body. And, you asked my last name, and I'm like, well, you can choose, because I've had a couple of them. And I like to just think I'm like Madonna. I don't need a last name, but will be going with by Sariah Bastion when
Well,
I
I
get
think we all decided we're going to get Sariah tattoos that just says Sariah. Like,
so my own story isn't pretty, and in the relationships that I've been in have worked with mental illnesses and addiction and betrayal, and through all of that, my self, my person has evolved to where I am no longer the person that I once was. And I think the biggest thing that I have been able to learn is that I can trust my body and that my body speaks truth, because I've always questioned that for myself, and I've always leaned on just pleasing other people, and I've ignored the yelling and the screaming that my body has done in the truth speaking that it was, questioning myself always. And this the journey that I've been able to travel has just brought me towards my divine self, to where I have a relationship with myself I never even knew existed.
hmm. So when you discovered yoga, because a lot of people get into yoga for different reasons, and some people do it just for the health benefits, physical health benefits, or to get in shape, whatever. Where did you sort of like step over into it being something more like, was there a stage in your life, or was there an experience you had, or like what just bridged that for you, to where it became more about like your spirituality and your wholeness, the wholeness aspect?
Yeah, I don't even know where it wasn't a defining moment that opened up that door for me, but I I did my 1,000-hour yoga therapy teacher training while I was married to my ex-husband, and I've been divorced almost 5 years now. And during the training, I was able to absorb what I could, but I was very much in my head. I was always wondering what was going on at home, and so I didn't, I didn't, um, I didn't get the fullness out of the practice. And uh, anyway, with time, I ended up divorcing and went back and retrained the entire 1,000 hours, and I added on another 200. And in that training, we learned more about the connection of breath and spirit and the different bodies that we can speak to as yoga teachers. The emotional body, the spiritual body, the physical body, the breath body, the bliss body. We have these different bodies we can speak to. But even with that, I didn't understand it. But I knew the language, and I at least had the vocabulary there. And I started teaching the prana courses. And prana is an 8-week course that I have created from the chakra healing workbook of Anodea Judith. And she is so wise in that book and has so much information about the chakra system. And I've been able to kind of place that whole book into my life. And through the course, I tell stories and I describe the body specifically in different ways that have helped me. And I really think that it was just the introduction of that course and the creating of that 8-week course, teaching it over and over and over again. I've taught it.
And that's how I met you, was taking your course, your 8-week course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's changed so many lives, and I think that I have an advantage that most people don't, and that I get to teach it 3 or 4 times a week. I'm teaching a different chakra, and I get to repeat it, and I get to reread it with the class, and every time something clicks, and then something else clicks, and then something else clicks, to where I'm learning something new about myself every time I talk. And then as I take the experiences of the book and my own stories, and I continue to be awake to myself, I get to learn even more about myself. And it's just been this defining and refining place to where I am today. And I can only imagine, and and I don't get caught up in that, but there's a sense of excitement of like, here I am today, and I had no idea that I could be present with my body. I had no idea I could actually live the life that I'm living this way. And when I'm, in 30 more years, what will I know then? And who will I be then? And
And
what
what will the earth be like for women?
Yes, yes, right. And how can I hold my space in this earth? And how can I establish that foundation and knowledge of who I am and share that with other people? And as I learn more about myself, that opens up, for the teaching of other people and inviting them to find themselves as well. So
I love it. When I took it, and I've actually got it right in front of me right now, Anodea Judith's book that I got at your class, I knew about chakras, and I knew I had actually pretty good understanding of them. But the way you wove it in to the body and letting the body speak, in fact, it's so marked up. I used colored pencils the whole time I was sitting there and like literally like writing all the margins and just it just resonated so much. But one of the things that I wrote here that I just thought would be fun for us to explore a little bit is um, you had posed the question, and I don't remember what the discussion was, the context around the discussion that we were having as a group leading up to me writing this down, but it was pretty early on in the course where you talked about just always asking and coming back to how does this feel in my body when this person is saying this to me, whether it's a spouse, a clergyman, a friend, a parent. I mean,
even
we
your
give
own
so much of our power away, but it was like, how does this feel?
Yeah.
How do I discern this feeling for me? And that was like life shattering for me.
Yeah, I mean, our body is constantly speaking to us, and um, for us to be able to like take a step back before just accepting what anybody has to say about us or to us or for us, to be able to decide if we want to take that in or not. Does that feel like something that is truth and I can learn and grow from? Does that feel like that's not truth? And is my body rebelling against that? Not ego, but my physical body, like, no, that's not my divine self, like, no, that has nothing to do with me. And we have that power to say, yes, I accept that. I can grow from this, I can learn from this, or no, that is not that is not mine.
That does not land in me. Yeah. Well, it's hard to separate whether how to internalize what's coming at you, what to take in and what to leave off, and what to give back to somebody else that's not yours.
And I think that just comes down to requiring constant presence. We live in such a habitual state, and we don't necessarily stop to think about how things affect us or what that feels like in our body. And that requires consciousness, that requires an awareness. And so it is that like stopping and breathing and feeling the ground beneath our feet, and maybe softening the tension in our jaw or in our gut. And before we respond or before we choose to accept or give something back, we observe like, how does this feel in me? And we can decipher between ego, which is like, I'm not even going to put up with this and I'm going to slam you back, or I'm going to, whatever our reaction to that is. Or we can be like, oh, that's truth. And that's a harsh truth. And I call it the please God, don't let this be truth. But that, we can accept that, or we can say no. But all of that requires a pausing, stopping, a breathing, a feeling, a looking around. Okay, this is where I am. This is really happening. This is my life right now. And that's so much what I love to teach is being at home with ourselves and finding comfort in our bodies and learning to trust that they are speaking truth.
Mm. One of the phrases you say a lot that I love is that the body is a resonating cavity of truth. And it literally cannot lie to us. So how do we know, like I kind of almost know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask you, like, how do you know if it's just your stuff coming up, like your history and your fear versus the truth? Like, let's say you have a physical reaction to like a guttural reaction to something that somebody says that doesn't feel true, but you're wondering, like, how do I discern this? Because I don't know if I'm just getting triggered because of my stuff or if this is actually a falsehood that someone's trying to inject into me.
Yeah. So, well, I'm going to go back to the first thing you said. Like the truth is in this moment, and this is my definition of truth is with this breath, this inhale and this exhale. This is the truth of this moment. And so, if I'm yelling and my body's big and my arms are extended, whatever truth is, whether that's a reaction to something, or I really need to be this angry, no matter what, truth is, I am this angry in
Yeah,
this moment.
that's just what is.
Right. I can be in the truth of this is where I am. And so for me, truth has a lot of different definitions and levels, but the basic truth that I love to write on is truth is I'm breathing in, and I have a cold, so you might hear me breathing
Me
in.
too.
And truth is I'm breathing out. And if I can stay with my breath, I can let truth be fluid and find myself in these different areas. But one of my very favorite things that I talk about is trigger versus truth. And when we learn to trust our bodies and we learn to sit in sensation and process through emotion and learn that feelings are not who we are, but they're an experience or they're information, that it is just a way that our body's talking to us. We have the opportunity to recognize, is this an old pattern? Is this a trigger? Or is this truth in that I'm in danger and I need to get myself to safety? So I tell, the story. It's when I was first started dating Boyd, he said something one day to my boys, and we were just sitting in my kitchen, and I was sitting on top of the counter, and he said something, and it triggered me. And this is what happened to my body. I felt like I had been slammed in between or in a sardine can. Like I was like smashed in between a sardine can. And my eyes were like laser beams, like boring into his body. And I felt that reaction. That was an unconscious reaction that happened to the thing that he said. So I was aware of this feeling of like being smashed in a sardine can and these laser beams. And with that sensation, I got off the counter and I put my feet on the ground and I just closed my eyes for a minute. And I just felt, I didn't think in my head, blah, 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 blah. I just felt like, okay, here I am. I'm with my kids. I listen to my breath. He's in the room with me. Do I feel like I am in danger? Do I feel like this man is a threat? Is this a red flag? Because me speaking personally, like I've never trusted my body, and I've recognized red flags in the past, but I haven't listened. And within a 2-minute time period, I was fine. In no way was he, he was just talking, and he had no idea that
what was going on for you internally.
Right. What he said was a trigger to me. But if I hadn't recognized my body sensation and been able to determine, okay, this is a trigger versus this is truth, and I need to get myself to safety, I probably would have just reacted in an old way, told him to leave, gotten mad at him, a typical man, whatever. Without recognizing the truth of the situation is I'm safe. But I could determine that by going into myself to find that safety. And that's the shift. That's the change, where I'm not reacting to external environment. I am living in this life, both inner and outer worlds, so that I can guide and direct my life instead of being controlled by those external forces.
I love that. Another kind of epiphany as I was listening to you, it kind of reminded me of some things I've been processing lately. Like, I think we get so dogmatic and so black and white about this is true, this isn't. This person is bad, this person is good, this person wants to hurt me, whatever, whatever. It's just all these like polar opposite things we grapple with because our logic brain is trying to make sense of our situation. But don't you think truth can change at any moment? Like, and I'm not talking about like absolute spiritual law truth. I'm talking about reality because you're processing your own stuff. Boyd is processing his own stuff as a perception based, like interplay that we're not even really aware of. But just, I think that's why being present is so important because you just don't know what the body is going to share with you about any given moment.
Right. So I believe the truth is fluid. And if you were to pay attention to your breath for a moment, no breath is created equal. And some breaths are shallow and some are short and some are feel suffocating and some are deep and cleansing and long, and whatever it is that our breath is breathing is the life that we're living.
And that is the truth of what is right now.
Moment, right.
The breath is the messaging around what's really happening.
And it changes. Every breath is different. And so truth is fluid also. If our breath rides on truth and truth rides on breath, it's not going to be in between two brick walls of never ending truth. And for real, my belief is I don't know, and I don't think that anybody really knows truth of truth of truth of truth. Like, we have laws, we have scientific facts, but like the truth of where we came from, I don't know. I have my beliefs and I can observe what feels like truth to me. But like you just said, Boyd is going to be going through his own thing. You are going to be going through your own thing. I don't think I don't think, this is just me again, anything is good or bad. I don't think that there is sin and righteousness. I think that all of your actions are expressions. And in that moment, it is the truth of where you are. And there is something to be said of that. And we can learn from ourselves, from the actions that we're living and the way that we guide our daily life. That to me is the more solid truth than anything wild or fantasized. And I've found so much spiritual connection and a drawing towards my divine self and my higher power in living that truth.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me, some of the paradigms that I ascribed to in my earlier years have really shifted back to that soul sovereignty and how God is the power of God, the insights, the wisdom is a lot more nuanced than I had believed it to be before, because we are met where we are at. And if somebody writes down something as a blanket statement for your own peace, happiness, and joy and fulfillment, well, that's just really not taking into account that sovereignty that we hold, that we each have as a divine being. You are the first person that really, like, I understood, I even knew about the science of breath, the thing that you said, Yogi, what is his name? Yogi
Bhajan?
Who wrote The Science of Breath? I can't remember. Was that him? Yogi Bhajan?
No, the article that we read in yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
I don't remember what his name is. I could probably find it,
but he talks a lot about the science, the physical, like the physiology, but also the spiritual science of breath. And I think you were the first person that really like helped me to connect that if I need a barometer at any given time for what I need to look at or what is happening around me, it's found in the breath. I love that what you said, the breath rides on truth and truth rides on the breath. And it isn't right or wrong, and it isn't good or bad, and it isn't evil or righteous, right? It just is. It's the reality of what is the body is. I mean, because we hold so much generationally within us, and we hold the record of heaven in us too. So it's all this distortion trying to like get out of us And the breath is like, hey, the reason I'm feeling shallow right now, the reason that this is shallow is because this is not your truth.
Yeah. Or the truth is I'm experiencing anxiety, or the truth is, so yes, but right. Like, again, like, truth has so many definitions. Like, we can be breathing shallow, and that's truth. And the reason that we can be not breathing shallow is because what is being said to us isn't truth. You know what I mean? Like, isn't our truth. And then, yeah, like, there's so many levels to that truth statement of breath. But the ultimate truth for me that I write on is I don't know anything else in this moment, but I know I just breathed in and now I'm breathing out. And that's truth.
Yeah. And that is where the spirit lives, is in the breath of life. There's so many references in scriptural truths and ancient texts and spiritual law. I like the, like you were talking about, the fluidity of the breath, and truth being fluid, and flow, and everything around healing attached to flow is, if I don't stay open, and that's the other thing, like staying open, and you talk a lot about in yoga about like softening. Um, but being in a group of women that were suffering with betrayal trauma and all forms of relationship issues, and many of the women in the first prana group I went through with you were really not sure what they knew as their truth. I think they didn't, either they felt silenced, or and I wouldn't have necessarily put myself in that category, because I have done a lot of work around like empowering myself, but at the same time, there's so much second guessing that happens when we try to express who we are. And I think the physical body can very much get in the way, whether we feel inhibited with our physical body, or we have body shaming, um, or just because we have fears around how we are seen as objects as women. I mean, there's so many levels, right? But just being just having those safety issues that we were experiencing in our marriages, and how you were walking us through that, was really, really incredible. What is your like biggest tip, or takeaway around how we get past body shaming ourselves?
Yeah.
How we
So,
get past all the self-talk around our bodies?
and this has to do with the chakra system as well, and in learning to recognize that our bodies are needed. They are necessary for this life. This is just my belief, my spiritual beliefs of my spirit consciousness is experiencing life on this earth planet, and it needs a body in order to hold it here. Gravity holds my body here on earth, and my divineness, my sacred self lives inside that spirit for me. As we think about our bodies as this baggage, or I just have to make it through this life with this body and then I'll be rid of it, as according to my beliefs, it is the reason that you're here. It is your body. Like, without it, you wouldn't be experiencing this amazing life. And so in the chakra system, in the first chakra, we have our body, food, taking care of it, diet, exercise, medical attention. We have our home, our finances, our work, our environment are all very important for us to be here on earth and live here on earth. The second chakra has to do with our senses. And so we pull in what we see, what we smell, what we taste, what we hear, what we feel. And it brings the outer world in so we can experience emotion, which is very needed on this earth. And we need our body to be able to do that. And then the third chakra is our ego identity, and how I've defined it as our shape. If we slump, or we extend our heart, or extend our spine, and our heart forward, or whatever the shape of our body is. But the shape of our body is needed for the behavior that is expressed in this life. for us to be able to act, because the third chakra, right, is the right to act. So from working to our home to finances to our body, like all of those things are necessary for our body here on earth, so we can experience this life. Our spirit experience this life. Our senses is needed and is only found in the body for us to experience this life. And then our shape and how we act is necessary, because that's how we are living this life. So one of my very favorite well conversations happened a couple months ago with a excuse me again, girl who's larger set came to my prana class. And the second week that uh, is attended, we move our bodies in some yoga poses. And she came up to me after class and she said, I have never liked being in my body. It's very uncomfortable. And she said, but something that you did tonight made it feel okay. So I will be back next week. And then she continued to show up week after week after week. And on the seventh chakra, when we talk about our true identity, our self identity, and then the universal identity, she and then how we need our body in order to be able to experience this life, but that the ultimate core is that the first three chakras are simply layers that are needed in order for us to experience life, and houses our divine self. And she raised her hand, and she was had tears coming down her eyes, and she said, I've been told my whole entire life that my body is a temple. And she said, but I never understood that. And she said, I always thought that I had to be a certain size or a certain shape, or I couldn't tattoo it, or I couldn't pierce it, or I couldn't do any of these things to my body because my body was a temple. And she said, but now I understand that my body is already a temple. It already houses my divine self, my spirit already, and has always lived here. And that was like, I mean, I got goosebumps and I started crying in that. That is so true. And that our bodies aren't to shame. Our bodies aren't this baggage that we have to carry around. Our bodies are what provide this experience. And going along with truth, if my spirit at one point knew truth in the consciousness of the existence of the planets and the universe and the galaxies, if my spirit knows truth and it lives in my body, and the only way that it can talk is through my body, I'm going to want to listen to it. So to not shame it, but to love it and to create a relationship with it, so that you can be with truth, which is breath, which is in this very moment, to listen to it.
I love that. I love that. And, I have felt, because I've had lower back surgery from a car accident that I had many years ago. I had my gallbladder taken out. I have thyroid issues. As I'm continuing to age, I just hit menopause last year, and little silver hairs poking through for the first time in my hair. And I'm like, this is so humbling to know that my body is my vehicle for empowerment, and it's a receptacle of truth. And it also has a natural tendency to deteriorate, even to be above and beyond my level of self-care with it. So just kind of be in a place of acceptance where I'm kind of writing that line with like, what can I control, versus what can I not? And having had 4 miscarriages in a row in my late 30s, early 40s, to bring my last 2 children here who decided to come differently, my body was trying to tell me all along that it wasn't my path to have these last 2 children. I was, forcing it, thinking I knew. My body was done having babies.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. You were trying to control something that you couldn't, and not trusting that there was a higher power.
Yeah. Yeah. that was outside, like that was outside of my
Right.
domain of power or control. Super humbling. Same thing happens with menopause and hormonal changes.
And in Buddhism, it's called impermanence. Like nothing is permanent. If we identify in this life with just our physical body and we try to prolong aging, and our whole energy is, like you just said, like our bodies are meant for empowering, but if we spend our entire day with surgery or the new thing that's going to help my wrinkles go away, or my skin not sag
Yeah.
as my body ages, like you said, like we can't help those things. This body is impermanent and it's always changing. But to just love it for what it's giving you, and the way that it's holding you now, it's going to do its job, and we can't control that, because ultimately we're not in control of when our breath finishes, and again, it goes back to that. But yeah, it's interesting how we try to control, or we think we know, or
That's like, and that happens on the yoga mat. And that is the practice of surrender that, as I'm looking around the room at all these women, trying to hold a pose, every single one of us are doing it. It's expressing differently. Not just because of the limits of our body, but our minds, our experience, the way we're engineered, designed, structured. So for me, as I look around the room, I'm like humbled, like, okay, so no two women are alike. No two bodies are alike.
no two stories are alike, no two experiences are alike. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And just recognizing that beauty and that diversity. Um, as we kind of wrap this up, I think you and I, and we already knew this. This would be like a series of discussions. We could not like get to the depth, but and I'll be seeing you later tonight at yoga. But can you leave us with any truth bombs or gems of just like, because I know you always have experiences that you attract to yourself because you have a larger audience to process. That you're like me, like we talk to women a lot, and so we're going to have experiences that are pretty unique because we need to process them and assimilate them so that we can then be qualified to teach them or facilitate women through these interesting challenges. But is there any like latest ahas or things you can leave us with that would be relevant, you feel?
Well, I think it's just for me and what I'm working on in my life, I guess. Is that what you're kind of asking? What I
Yeah. Like what's just up right now? Like what's a new aha?
Well, getting married is an aha,
Yeah.
and I've learned that I have created my own business, and this year was 2018 was my most successful year, and I have purchased a townhome, and I've provided a safe place for myself and my two boys to live, and part of me wants to hold on and cling to this, like this is my safe place. But I am learning to trust myself more and more to where I can find safety everywhere I go. And so this again, like going back to like worldly matters, this is an external home that has provided safety for me, while I've lived here. But I will continue to have safety within myself in a new home, and I don't have to cling to this, but I can surrender this and move into a different home, move into a different relationship, and also move into a different place within myself, of just continuing to find safety now with a partner and two other kids that will be with us 50% of the time. So that's kind of what I'm working on, and how I do that is a continual practice of finding myself. And I know I say that a lot, but it's a lot of feeling my feet on the ground, a lot of observing the shape of my body, a lot of noticing when I'm tight and my body's, rigid and sitting, or lying or surrendering physically in my body, a lot of changing my shape, a lot of recognizing the breath. And those I call that kind of my perch. Like those are the things I always go back to. Like I can practice, being in chaos or disrupt or going into story or fears or whatever it is, but I can always come back to this moment and find safety in my body. And again, going back to that truth of this is the truth, is I'm right here right now, and I can't help if anything happens. I can't help if the next shoe drops. I can't help if I get hit in the face with a frying pan. I can't help if any of these things happen, but I can be with myself. And if I'm with myself, I will be able to sense if those things are happening or there is disrupt, and then I will be able to trust my body to know that it's speaking truth. So that's kind of where I am in my own personal life, just continuing to act on trusting myself. Like I can say that, but I have to actually move forward with that. And
yeah, it takes a lot of courage.
Totally taking a risk.
Yeah, and I love that because it reminds me of the phrase like standing in a holy place. It's just where you are in your body temple, wherever home is for you, and wherever you are could, when we're out of our element and what's familiar and comfortable, it just means that we're growing somehow and we're redefining what that is for ourselves. But I love your perspective on it. And thank you for taking the time to share today. I know you and I both have been a little under the weather with this respiratory thing, but hey, we did it.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I look forward to more experiences with you and podcasts and maybe even retreats with you.
Oh yeah, we're totally doing that. Yeah. We're totally going to have a retreat.
Yeah. So let's make it happen.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much, Sariah, for sharing today. Thanks again to Sariah for giving us this time, especially because she is getting married later this month. I think the highlights I took from our discussion was that the breath rides on truth and the truth rides in the breath. And it's always a way that we can connect in, and it's free and it's available all the time. And it really just gives us that sense of embodiment, like we have a right to be here and we can claim our station, if you will. And I also want to give a shout out to all the ladies who are in my 200-hour teacher training with Sariah. We have just come to love each other as sisters. And I hope that some of them are listening. And I just want to tell them again how much I love them and how they have inspired me to get into my body and into my practice and to really take my self-care and speaking my truth into a true soul level for the rest of my life.